Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Lazy Actor, the podcast that goes through all the great acting books, takes out the key learnings, the fun stories, so you don't have to, because you are too busy trying to get excited about gardening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is, how can I describe Julian Richings? Prolific, impactful, one of my favorite, I would say, character actors ever. Julian, welcome to The Lazy Actor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Julian, you know, I looked you up on Wikipedia and it says you have over 50 credits to your name, but it's actually much more because you're also very accomplished in theater as well.
Yeah. I grew up in the theater. The reason that I ended up in Canada was I came with a touring theater company from Britain. And ended up here. So I span two different ideas and philosophies, and and I've adapted to life in North America in the last 30 years, I guess.
Well, I'll be honest with you. For the longest time, I just assumed you put on the accent for your performances.
I'm pretentious. That's it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
it's interesting that I have. So I've lived in Toronto for over 35 years, and my two kids are now grown-up Toronto kids. And I have a son and a daughter. And my daughter has in particular picked up some of the Englishisms, some of the turns of phrase. And a lot of people think, who is that pretentious young woman? You know, and she goes, it's my father's accent. I can't help it. I picked it up.
So she picked up a English accent.
Well,
I want to say British accent.
There's kind of a Southern Ontario.
Yeah,
there's a Southern Ontario Anglo lilt that I recognized when I first came here too. There's a very sort of Scottish Presbyterian feel to small towns, and that, you know, everybody says, I can tell they're Canadian because they say a boot. You know, there's all those cliches too. But just in terms of nuance, in terms of emphasis, there is a kind of there is a Britishness. So you only have to pick up a couple of idioms and a couple of expressions from the old country that I bring with me, you know. And my daughter probably sounds like she's a pretentious English poet or something. I don't know.
Well, you know what's funny? Growing up in Vancouver, there's like a whole part of Vancouver called the British Properties. And growing up, it was never weird to see, never kids, but it was never strange to hear adults with, you know, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, English accents. It was just part of like the environment we grew up in. That's what I always associated with adults.
Yeah.
And don't let this fool you, Julian. I'm an adult as well. Don't let this fool you.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you bring up the theater and how you have, because, you know, most people will know you as a film and television actor, but I actually saw you at Tarragon a few years ago for Mustard. It was, we'll talk about that more later. But
yeah,
you guys did great. You and Tony did so good. So good. I loved it. The book that we're going to today, Audition by Michael Shurtleff. He was famous as a casting director in theater. New York theater. And a lot of the things that he talks about, and we've talked about it in the few chapters, has been, I always wonder how applicable it is to the film and television world. So we're right now heading into chapter 4, which is some things an actor needs to know. And we're going to talk about some of the little subheadings he has here. And as we get in here, at any point, there's a few things I don't want to challenge here that probably are more for the world of theater than the world for film and television. Okay. But I will always defer to your opinion. So here we go. The first thing that an actor needs to know in chapter 4 is what to do when the reading is, talk about that for a little accent there. What to do when the reading isn't going well. And he says, blame or give. You either got to blame the actor or give something to the other actor, to the person you're auditioning with. What popped in your head when you read that?
It's kind of extreme. When you deal with other people's terminology for acting process, actors are generally very obedient. I'm very obedient. I listen. I'm a good student. I do what I'm told. I take direction well. And when you get certain words, the danger is that you get hung up on that word, faster, be nicer, especially if they're not very specific. And when I first heard those words like blame, I'm going, oh my God, that's a bit much. I take issue with the word itself, but I understand what's behind it. And I understand that what he's saying is, and I'll put it in my own terminology,
yes, exactly, yes.
Which I think is, again, a necessary step for an actor to do, is to go, okay, these are the words that this person is using in order to communicate something. How can I understand that and contextualize it for myself? So, specific words don't have innate value. They're just a means to kind of prod you. Yeah. So the word blame for me says to me, be active, take an active choice. If you're drowning and you're feeling disempowered and you're losing, you're just sinking, then be assertive, make a choice that's a bold choice, and actually take an action that will change the direction of how it's going. Seize the opportunity.
I really like the way you phrase that, because I think to myself, when sometimes you're doing these scenes where you're essentially playing like 2 or 3 lines, and you're doing the audition, and sometimes it's not appropriate to blame someone. And he says even when it's not appropriate, do it. But the core of it is making a strong choice.
Exactly.
Because if you're in the audition and you make a strong choice, even if it's not what they're looking for, they'll be like, that was a great choice. Let's try it again without.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Julian, I told this story. And so I had a miscommunication with my agent, and I thought I had to do this audition with an Indian accent, like an East Indian accent. Ooh, so I did this whole audition with this accent, and the casting director was like, Yvonne, that was great. Just wondering why we're doing accents though, like out of nowhere. And I was like, what do you mean? I thought I had to. She's like, no, but it was a great choice. And they ended up deciding to send that as well. We did it without the accent, but they just thought that was a strong choice. We weren't looking for it, but strong choice.
Yeah. So what you're doing in that case is you're imposing something onto the scene that's come from a lot of thought and a lot of energy from yourself. And I think that's what I'm constantly reading from this book, is that he's demanding that you kind of get your own resources and recognize that you have power in the situation. And you have to bring it. And
that's very true, because, as actors, when you said I'm very obedient, as actors, we're totally told to, listen to the director, stand here, go there,
Well, this is the issue
between the strength and also the obedience, right?
And we have this myth that, you're an actor, you must be really interesting. You must be. I think that actually actors live vicariously through their roles. So some of the finest actors that I know are actually pretty, I won't say boring. Nobody's boring.
Please list all of them actors right now, please. Go.
But are human beings. They're mundane. They get bored. They are boring. They say the same things. They get caught in verbal tics and patterns. We all do. And I think for me, and I'm talking personally here, I find that acting gives me permission to do the things that I would not normally do in life, and that I'm too shy or too obedient, so it's trying to find that inner lion or monster or whatever you want to call it, and to allow it and give it permission.
And one of the things he says is this: literally, you need to find an action that will involve you with your partner.
Yeah.
So right after he talks about that in that section, he says you have to involve like something that's going to involve you personally in the scene, like drawing upon things.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to get your opinion on he says, doing something really big and bold, if the audition is going poorly and you can see someone doing this, like, and for everyone who's listening, this is an excellent audio side. Sometimes out of the corner of your eye, you might see, like, if there's a producer in the room or a casting director, they might start like checking their phone, like out of the corner of the eye.
Oh man, I've been there. Yeah.
Oh God, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're like, what do I do? And that's when he says, you got to do something strong. And he says, even if it's an irrational act, you should, this is exactly why you should do it, because you got to do something strong. You have to, it has to be emotional, and it will at once involve you in a relationship again with your partner. And I think in this case, partner is the reader. Have you ever been in those situations where you're like, this audition is going terribly, I got to do something, and in the moment?
Yeah, I've generally, in those situations, I've generally sunk and drowned and gone out of the room with my tail between my legs and kind of gone.
That's actually, to be honest with you, Julian, that's inspiring to me. Because someone who's a veteran of your caliber, someone who I admire as an actor, to know that that still happens to you, it helps. You know, it's nice to hear that, for as terrible as that sounds.
I think this is something that we all have to come to terms with, is that we fail. And we do fail. I fail. I fail at auditions, and it's not necessarily my fault. It's not because I'm not good or this or that or the other, but we are going to go into situations where it just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And, you know, rather than even trying to invent a scenario and impose something that says, hey, you that's looking at your watch, pay attention to me, kind of thing, sometimes you just have to go, okay, that's it, I'm moving on.
I'm out of here.
Not because you're superior to the thing or you are inferior or any, but it doesn't work. And I think that's part of an actor's ballast, is that we do feel it. We feel all the criticism we get. We feel completely embarrassed when an audition doesn't go well, but it's not going to. And it doesn't matter how experienced you are. Surely, you know, you should be that much in touch with your inner emotions that you do feel it. And it's a reminder to yourself that you are a thinking, feeling human being. That's who we are, and that's what makes us interesting.
You know, Julian, I just want to jump in there, because I think we need, everyone who's listening, you need to embrace that, something you said, because no acting book I've ever read has really said, sometimes you're just going to fail. You might have prepared, it might be really important, but sometimes you're going to go to the audition and there's no way to save it.
And then, you know, you go back and you go, oh, I should have done this. I should have done.
Yes, you sit in the car. You sit in the car and you just, I suck. I'm never going to work again. They're never going to call me. All the things. Yeah.
And you just have to kind of go, well, wait a minute. I did okay a couple of weeks ago, and so really liked me, and you know, and you just have to you have to move on. But I think what I'm getting at is it's recognizing vulnerability. And it's a double-edged sword. Our vulnerability can either kill us and make us very shy and unassuming and ineffective, or, but at the same time, it's the very vulnerability that we feel that makes us have access to our emotions and that canvas that is us, and that peculiar set of contradictions that makes us interesting to watch.
And it's funny that you talk about this this contradiction and making us interesting to watch, because it leads kind of into the next kind of learning that he says. And he says, you know, some things an actor needs to know is you need to change your partner is one of the most important motivations. So he's saying looking externally. And here's one of the things that I highlighted here. Never deal with the desire to change another person as an abstraction. You must take the changes you want very specific. So then he gives some examples. I want you to learn to like my mother, rather than a family should get along. Yeah. I want a divorce unless you stop eating crackers in bed. So he talks about, like, really, what is your specific motivation to change someone in the audition?
Yeah.
And then I'll give you one more note here and get your opinion on this. He says, the secret is what you want to change should be a secret. And that secret is an essential piece of knowledge for an actor. Do you still approach scenes thinking, like, how do I want to change this other person? I know it's a trope in acting classes. What do you want from the other person? How do you want to change them? How do you change from the beginning to the end? How do you approach that kind of idea?
I guess I have an agenda. I try to articulate in my own mind what it is, and not share it with the other person, because otherwise, again, going back to that polite thing, is we'll probably meet halfway and it will become an uninteresting scene, right? Like if I tell you, Ivan, you know, I'm really upset with the way that you treated my brother yesterday, and blah blah blah. And if I explain this all to you, you again are going to try and sort of go along with it and open that door, but not allow me to play it fully. So I understand the idea of it being secret, but at the same time, there's another contradiction where you can't be so obscure or wrapped up in your own agenda that it has nothing to do with the person in front of you. Mm-hmm. So I understand where this is coming from, and I understand that some of these instructions or these tropes that you mentioned are useful, but they're useful tools in the toolbox, not necessarily the main purpose of a scene or the energy.
So you don't always have to strive to have a secret with this person.
I don't think you do. I don't know. If I'm talking to you now and you've got a big bandage around your head, or you've clearly been upset, you know, that takes preeminence over what I want from the scene, you know, like, yeah. And maybe, you know,
it's a tool in the toolbox is a great way. Sorry, Julian, finish.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
You know, and so, if I can throw in another concept here, and this is one of those moments where, because he is so involved in theater, this is one of those moments where the assumption that of the audition is that it's going to be 4 pages long, that it's going to be a monologue followed by 3 scenes, and your audition will take a half hour. It's not, hey, I'm paramedic.
Yeah,
I got to learn these 3 lines.
Exactly. And you're a paramedic and you got to go in and you got to take vital signs. You've got other things going on, you know, immediate tasks, and you can't overthink. You can't overplay. Like, it's no good coming in with a whole backstory if you are literally running off and, you know, going on.
So I'll tell you, Julian, I had a friend of mine, and this is a back in the day commercial, and she was doing a commercial, and she had, when you said overthinking, this is the first thing I thought of. It was, do you remember, oh God, the Men's Warehouse? I'm Joel Bryant and you have my word on it. It was these commercials and so she was doing one of those. It was a wedding scene, no dialogue, silent on camera, SOC. And they were there for the day, and she was just, all she had to do was walk up to the aisle and look at him. And the guy was just looking at her. And she said, I had to sit through an hour of our backs. This one guy doing the commercial, he was like, he had this huge backstory about their 20-year relationship and all the things. And then he wanted her backstory. And she was like, I'm just going to look like I'm in love with you. And sometimes it can be that easy.
Yeah. What I get from this, I'm going to extrapolate a little bit.
Sure.
Where again, I think I'm trying to get at what is being encouraged rather than the letter of what's being said. And for me, it's always been very helpful as an actor, whether it's in theater or in film, is to play the action, not to play the feeling. So here's an example. I did a show called Inexpressible Island, where a group of Scots Antarctic expedition in 1910 were stranded in the Southern Hemisphere in freezing cold weather. And we had to play, there was 6 of us that played these marooned Royal Navy guys. And we knew that we were freezing. So we sort of acted cold, right? And we would, like, what do you do when you act cold? You shake.
You do the shrug and you shake. Yeah.
And we were doing this for at least a week, saying our lines and acting cold because it was cold. And then we suddenly realized, wait a minute, when you're cold, what do? You don't act cold, you keep warm. So in other words, rather than reflecting and showing you, I'm really cold, you spend your time trying to keep warm and be active with maintaining the warmth, and it puts you in an entirely different position. And it it sends the energy out, and it's true. Do you understand what I mean? It's not you sort of imitating or mimicking. It's you actually having a value and playing the value and what's needed in the scene.
And I think that's so powerful. Playing the action. And there's two things I want to jump in on. One, number one, you doing that action affects the other people in the room. When he's talking about like trying to change, that by itself is something that can help the other actors in the room. And then just as a side note for our listeners, and by the way, for anyone who's not listening, Julian, you did a little something there where you changed your physicality to demonstrate this. You can watch this on YouTube as well. We'll be posting that on YouTube in the links down below. But the other aspect of this is a lot of people don't realize that, especially for film and television, a lot of acting has to be technical. It's physical actions.
Right.
And when we get so caught up in feeling like, no, we have to feel and feel, but sometimes it's like, no, I just need you to shrug a little more for the angle. And then you have to be truthful and still do those things, but also be like, shrug a little more.
Absolutely. Hit this mark, hit that mark. And there is a technical aspect to film and television that I really enjoy. And you get the camera operator to say, just look over there at that point, and the light will hit you in such a way it looks much better. And in fact, your performance looks much better because they've constructed it in such a way that the focus suddenly goes on you and that bit of light that's hitting your eye, So you have to be prepared to work technically. I have no difficulty with this. I've worked with special effects teams a lot because of my facial construction. I've played lots of monsters, lots of, going back to War of the Worlds, aliens and people that, or creatures or characters that require extra help from technical teams. So I'm very used to working with them in conjunction. So sometimes an acting instruction like go over there and stand there for 10 seconds is enough validation for me, because I will find the reason for those 10 seconds. Even though it's purely technical, I will actually land and stand and sit and watch or whatever I've been given, within the context of the creature that I'm playing or the alien that I'm playing. I make myself listen, or I give myself a very specific, or I'm smelling something, or I sort of try and connect it to a reason why I'm stopping. But they don't need to, the director doesn't need to give me the validation for stopping for 10 seconds.
You know, it's funny. This really brings me, there's another aspect to this in the stuff we were reviewing. Stage directions are traps.
Yeah.
He says, ignore all stage. Someone told me that stage directions aren't for the actor. They're for the producer. The writer's trying to talk to the producer and the reader to say, so they can imagine it.
Yeah.
But the actor, if it says crosses the room.
Yeah. Loudly.
That's a technical action.
Yes. Yes.
How you cross the room is where the brilliance comes in.
Yeah.
Now, Julie, there's another one, and we're going to talk. I want to come back to this whole concept of facial construction. That's going to be in the next part of the podcast. The trap all actors experience here, and I want to get your perspective on this. He talks almost not at all, and I feel when you probably got the same sense. I feel like this book could have been a lot shorter because some of the ideas just start going all over the place. He's overlapping all over the place, trying to create more content. But this is one thing that really stood out to me, and that is the word what.
Okay. Yeah.
How often does something happen and you say what? And I remember when I was learning how to act, and you just know that one simple word would destroy scenes because no one knows what. And
I see.
What never means I didn't hear you. What means, like he says, on the contrary, you are finding what you have heard either unbelievable or unacceptable. How do you deal with this dialogue and you have to say what? Have you ever had those moments?
Yeah. Sure, I have. And generally, our crisis comes into effect when the less we have, the more problematic it is. The less words. Yes. So if you've got two sentences, and one of the words is what, you agonize over that bloody line rather than just contextualize it and go, oh, he can't hear, or he doesn't believe you, or whatever. It's a simple choice. Whereas we tend to worry too much about it, and it's going back to what we were talking about earlier. We overthink things, and when actors start overthinking, we can see it. We can see that they're investing too much in that choice, or that it feels fabricated. It doesn't feel true. And often in a situation like what, it's just a throwaway. But I don't know. It's easier when you have large chunks of dialogue that doesn't even come into play, because you have a journey that you're on, and a subtext, and a specific relationship with a bunch of other characters, so that it just flows. It just is part of the evolution of the story. Whereas, unfortunately, I still get that too, where you agonize over three words because you've got a sum total of 16 words, and you've got to make every one of those words count in an audition. Well, really, the best thing is to forget about that, to be as casual as you can, and try and figure out, well, what's the action at the time? What am I doing to make these words not very important? Stanislavski did a thing with his leading actor at the Moscow Arts Center. This happened in, I think it was a Cherry Orchard, I can't remember which one it was, so his actor had to say a few words, walk over and say something else, and it was basically exposition. So Stanislavski said, here is a bottle of wine, here is a corkscrew, open it. And so the actor walked from one side of the room to the other whilst saying his lines, opening a bottle, but he was worried about opening this bloody corkscrew, because it's not easy, especially on stage, right?
As an actor, I worked as a server, so I understand. Everyone listening probably understands.
Suddenly, there was no problem with those words, because you're thinking about something else, and the words just come out naturally. So you have an action, and so anyway, it's a long story, a long philosophical story, but it was a eureka moment for that actor. And then Stanislavski went away, let the show continue, and he came back to watch the show that was up and running maybe a month later, and suddenly realized that this actor had abstracted the cork screw to become part of his dialogue, so that it had actually got to the point where the abstraction had become the text, and the words had become irrelevant, and it was a way of conveying what was going on underneath. And this actor Meyerhold had a big row with Stanislavski and formed his own theater of biomechanics, and started to go into a whole different area. So you got a sort of a parting of the ways of the physicality and the inner subtext. So it's a sort of I am oversimplifying this into a sort of an anecdote, but I think you get the idea that it was a brilliant suggestion by a director, by a theater director, not just a guy that you read the works of Stanislavski and they're sort of eulogized and lionized, but it was a pragmatic solution to a problem that an actor was having, and it did really well. But it did so well that it grew into being something else, and then it became another problem, because it's that the whole scene started to be about opening a corkscrew, opening a bottle.
There's a couple of walkaways I want to take from that for our listeners. Number one, what a great callback, Julian, to play the action. And you said that earlier. And I think I just want to remind people that if you're struggling with a word, it's a tool, not a rule. That sometimes if you're struggling with what one or two words mean, play the action instead. Work on what you're doing, the physicality, because then you can throw the word away, and that can help you to deliver a performance. Is that fair, Julian?
Very fair. Yeah.
And I will also say this for all our newer, actors, and I'm still certainly not above this. The way the industry works is here in Canada, in Georgia as well, productions get tax credits based on the local actors they hire. So some productions will literally just have an actor to come in and say, what? And then that's their whole lot. That's it. They're in and out.
Right.
It's like a day player or an acting role. And so for all of you that are struggling with those kind of roles, if you're getting a lot of those roles, listen to what Julian's saying and don't just focus on what you're trying to say or communicate something with the word. Focus on your physicality and focus on the action as a tool for delivery.
Right.
To tell a story, did I say? Because that is the next part that he talks about. He talks about telling a story. And again, I actually found this whole section a very, like, he kind of is just jumping all over the place. So I didn't find any real key learnings from that. But there, I don't know if you noticed anything there, but I would actually much rather go to get your experience on this section here. When he says, if the audition is going badly, should I stop?
Right.
Before I say
he
anything,
says no.
I want to hear your.
Yeah, I know that in the passage that we're looking at, he says no. You should always keep going and never give in. Again, I kind of I see where he's coming from. You know, in terms of society, there's a useful thing to know. It's so true. Like society and acting and our craft, we condone spoil sports, but we don't like. Sorry, let me go again. We accept cheats, but we don't accept spoil sports. It's the same with children's games. Like you know, theater has evolved from elaborate rituals, and you can go back to children in a playground playing games. You know, dipping rhymes. You guys probably grew up. I grew up in a very insular English society where our playground games were structured in such a way that you would have dipping rhymes to see who was it or he or who was the, you know, dip, 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 my little ship. So really,
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo's.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. All those things, they're long established rituals, and they're generally rhythmic, and they come from our innate need to tell stories and to share experiences, right? And so in those games, if you cheat, it's okay. It's like if you don't actually close your eyes when you're supposed to close your eyes, and you kind of peek through, or you go, no, I'm safe, I'm not safe. Like, you know, the way children resolve disputes. But if you basically cross your arms and go, I'm not playing, that's stupid, I'm not doing that, and you close the door, it's not accepted. It's not accepted by society either. We don't accept people that opt out of society completely. Yeah. We accept people that are criminally cheating society, and milking it, but they're accepting the rules and they're playing the rules, right?
Yeah.
And so to go back to this bit of text here is that I get it. Yeah. I think it depends on your circumstance. He's saying never give up, like always keep going forward. Well, that's him talking as a casting director. Mm-hmm. It obviously has pissed him off along the years with people kind of going, I give up, I don't want to do this, or whatever. And he's had experiences, and that's his standard. But I wouldn't take it as a golden rule. There must be times where you have to go, can I start again, please?
I've certainly done it. Yeah, I've certainly done it.
I don't see that that's wrong. I mean, but again, you have to read the room, and but don't be a spoil sport about it. Like and also if the person that you're reading with, for instance, if you're in a situation where you've got two actors that are auditioning together, and you're not screwing them up, if they're doing really well, but you're not doing so well, I think it would be very rude. And it would be an indication of somebody that's not very collaborative if you suddenly went, wait, I want to try that again. Can we, be aware and sensitive.
So Julian, I'd love to know I'll give you one of mine. And if any of these pop in your head, I'd love to know some examples of when you fought through or when you said, sorry, can I start over? And one of the ones that I'll give you first, I have two fight through stories.
Right.
Where I came into the audition, and I'm the guy that I like to learn the other person's lines as much as I know my own.
Right.
So I can play both parts, because I literally walk around the house playing both parts and being crazy. I'm sure like you do. What are they? Like I literally change, like look one direction as the one character, the other direction as the other character. I do all that stuff. So I walked into an audition, and I walked in and I had the first line. So the casting director said, okay, whenever you're ready. And the reader started saying the lines because the reader thought he was doing mine. And I just kind of went with it. And then about 3 lines in, the casting director was like, I'm sorry, what part are we reading for right now? And they're like, oh, we messed it up. I was like, yeah, it was my line first. No big deal. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second time, he did it again. I guess third time we managed to switch, but I decided I was going to fight through it.
Right.
In retrospect, part of that was my insecurity as an actor. Oh, maybe I made a mistake. I don't want to do anything. Yeah. And we feel that in the audition. We feel like, the casting director, we are scared by them, intimidated by them because they have the power. That being said, I was in an audition for, I think it was the Chronicles of Riddick. Remember the Chronicles of Riddick?
Yeah.
They filmed that in Montreal, And first, I just kept blanking. And so I was in a line and we were going through dialogue and I blanked on a line. And instead of making it up, I said, I'm sorry, I just blanked on this line. Can we start again? And they said, yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Any idea? Does that pop up anything in your head?
Well, it's context. I mean, I've often I have a kind of mind that really does go blank. I will be particularly in a stop-start situation of film and television, where it's sort of like suddenly out of context, or there's somebody like the makeup artist has been doing something and chatting and trying to be encouraging, but sort of feeding information in your ear. It's put you off, and then you suddenly go, I'm not in the right headspace. So it does happen a lot. Theater, it doesn't tend to happen so much because you sort of program yourself for long arcs of focus. And I'm good. I can build up the muscles quickly if I'm rehearsing for a theater show. So it's on a sort of a long distance energy, as opposed to sort of short sprints that are in film and television. But yeah, I lose it. Sometimes I'll just try and paraphrase my way through. If it feels right, or it's sufficiently intimidating that I don't want to admit that I've completely screwed up. But there'll be other times, again, it depends on your confidence level and the circumstance, really. I don't know that there are golden rules, except, as I say, we all can accept cheats, but we can't accept spoils. So if you do it in the spirit of a cheat, where you go, I'm going to fake my way through this one, I think. Oh my God. And you're doing it by the seat of your pants. People can kind of accept that. And there's a kind of a thrill to it. But if you kind of go, shut up, stop, everybody, stop what you're doing, stop what you're doing, stop what you're doing. I just forgot my line. It's like, excuse me, it's inappropriate.
And, there are situations where I've been, on set, and this happens a lot more with like the series regulars or the guest stars, where in the heat of the moment, they'll totally blank, mess up a line, and be like, hold on just one sec. And then they'll just jump right back into it, because they can always splice that out in the editing room.
Very much so. And
brought up something.
Go ahead.
Go. You finish your sentence and I'll tell mine.
It's just about energy, really. And sometimes if within a long scene, an actor feels that the energy is flagging, it's necessary to cut it and to go back in, because it's sort of by take 3, it's actually what's referred to here is what you start to play the end of the scene, or you're caught in a particular energy that you've repeated constantly, and it's actually not the kind of energy that you need at the beginning of the scene. So it's better to make a clean cut and to go back to it. There was one instance I will never forget. I've had the honor of working with Michael Gambon, who is one of my favorite actors, but I've also been his sidekick in a couple of films. So I've built up quite a rapport with him. Okay. And there was, I did a Kevin Costner film called Open Range, in which he plays the bad guy and I play the bad guy sidekick. And there was one point where it had obviously got to the point where we needed a change of energy. We were approaching this really difficult, sort of almost sadistic scene too seriously. Now, Michael being Michael, an old school British actor, didn't, have a meaningful conversation with people. What he did was he told a very off-color joke just as the cameras were rolling. And it was and he's very funny. He's a great raconteur. And it got everybody, including all the camera folks around, in hysterical laughter. The director hadn't heard it because he was some way away at the monitor, and said, okay, rolling action. And all of us had this kind of ridiculous story in our head when we went into this very heavy scene. And it was brilliant. I mean, because what it did is it put us all in the same wavelength, but we weren't stuck in this sort of sadistic mindset. The violence came out of something that was sudden. So he had actually taken us back to a different frame of mind so that the violence could be a surprise.
So there's a few things that I want to take from there. So first, as a note to our audience, in film and television sets, the director is usually like very far away. They're like around the corner. You never see them. You know, it's usually the first AD that does
disembodied voice.
Yes, to be like, you'll hear what you see. Someone grab their ear like they're in the Secret Service. Be like, just a little bit, a little higher there, Julian. Like that's what you'll get. Yeah. The second thing that I think you touched on that's really great is you brought up, because Michael Shurtleff does talk about playing the ending, because you knew it was going to be a hardcore, like a torture scene, intense, like physical. You know that's happening as the actor, but the character doesn't. So getting yourself out of that is very important. So you're not playing the energy, because otherwise people know what's coming. And that brilliance of like saying the joke to get not just everyone on the same kind of like energy level, on the same wavelength, but to show that contrast, that change, that is something that an actor can bring to surprise an audience.
One other thing, going back to what we were saying earlier, is that in that situation, all the protocols were observed, all the protocols of a set, because it was a scene in which Michael's character demonstrated the sadistic switch of mood. He was the leading actor in that scene. He is, the respected veteran of stage and screen. So it was appropriate for him to make that choice and to do it. If it had been me as his sidekick to go, hey guys, I got a joke, it wouldn't have had the same currency or the effect, because, in terms of the protocols that had been established and the story that was being told, no. So it's not a general rule to everybody. Again, it depends on context and going with the flow, really.
Julian, as I was kind of training as an actor, I also went to business school, and I went to McGill, and they teach business. Like, the most arrogant people you meet is someone who just graduated business school, because they make us feel like we should be running a Fortune 500 company after 4 years of school. In the same way, I think sometimes as actors, if you've done like 2 years of training in some sort of program, or maybe a 4-year baccalaureate, or maybe you've gone to like specific acting teachers, you come out of there feeling like you should star a TV show. Yeah. And I think what you mentioned is very important, because there is a structure, and in a way it's a hierarchy, but there, as an actor, no one teaches you these things, that when you show up to set, if you're playing just 1 or 2 lines, you're there for a few days, you have to kind of be mindful of what you can and cannot get away with in terms of like socializing, for example, or in terms of setting the tone for the set. And certainly I think what you're getting at is, a lot of times the star or stars of the show, or the principals of the main kind of characters of the show, have a little more discretion in setting the tone of energy than someone who might be there for a day or two.
Absolutely. My other example of that is the show Supernatural, which has a huge.
I've also experienced the Supernatural set, and it was lovely. And I go for it. Yeah, I know exactly.
It has a huge fan base, right? So a lot of people immediately respond to the fact, oh, if you've been in Supernatural, do you know Jensen? Do you know Jared?
Of course.
And the point about those two guys, the show has been going for 15 seasons because they are good guys, and they're humble, but everybody knows that they are the brand, that those guys are the show, and the fan base has watched them develop over 15 years. They've grown up from very young guys to these mature superstars. But when you're on a set with them, they are incredibly gracious and as all good actors, they allow you to be as good as you can be. They're very generous. They don't kind of go, well, this is all about me. If you're coming in with a specific primary color into a scene, they will try and enable you to bring that primary color to the scene because it makes everybody look good. But there's an acknowledgement that they are carrying the brand, like, you know, and you have to go in and you have to recognize that the success of this show is based on these guys. So you have to be respectful of that. And it is a hierarchy, and some people have an issue with that, but I don't. Well, especially with people that are very gracious within it, and also very collaborative. But yes, it's a hierarchical structure, more so than theater. But theater also has its own, as does every organized human.
There's always
activity.
a hierarchy.
There is
something.
something.
There's numbers on a call sheet that literally tell you where you stand.
What dressing room you have, you know, what trailer, you know, all those things. They're all in there, and we're all aware of them.
Yeah.
But it's really, if they're clear and they're in place, then you can work against them too. Yeah.
And I will, just for everyone who, if for everyone who isn't watching, they're just listening. Julian played Death in Supernatural and was a recurring character. Times over.
Yeah. For about 5 seasons, very, very few appearances actually, but it was an iconic character because I was the Grim Reaper. So they were very memorable scenes, and they were always with our 2 main guys, and they came at an impactful moment in the show. You know, oh my God, here is the Grim Reaper. What's he going to do? Is he going to reap our heroes or whatever? So there were high stakes.
There's always a big dramatic moment when you always had an entrance. That's what I remember. It's like you always kind of like walked in, music, and then cut to commercial, because you're like, that's why if they cut to commercial right after your entrance, that you know you're important.
So it played status, and as a result, my status became high because I played a high status figure. Mm-hmm. And also it was always in one-on-one scenes with the leads, who were very, as I say, very gracious actors and very good guys, who would try and make the scenes as good as they could be. They would never pull rank and kind of go, excuse me, but it's all about me. It was all about the scene, you know. So it was a very enjoyable experience, but I certainly got to see what a journey those guys were on, and what a heavy load they carried in terms of, every decision made in that show affects them or is affected by them and what they do.
And it's a really great example of how the leads, the stars of a show or a film or what have you, can really set the tone for everyone else, because that was a fun set to be on. They've been at it for so long. They know what the show is. They know what their roles are. And so you walk in, and you're right. I was there for 2 days. They made me feel like I was going to be a recurring character, because they just were they're like, Yvonne, how you doing? And I was like, how am I doing? I'm doing great. Like, wow. And I've also been on other sets where the lead actor was very serious. And you bring up something that I think not a lot of people can appreciate about being on set, because you hear lots of stories about leads doing this or that or this or that. But we also have to remember that whoever the star of a show is or a film is does have a lot of pressure on them, because the success or failure of any project will always be associated with their face and name. Also, so that can really affect, as someone like, like yourself or myself, who comes in as a guest star, a couple of days, 1 season, we're in and out, but we don't carry the legacy of the project.
And also, in terms of storytelling, we're not the primary narrative. I mean, it's the heroic journey of our leads. That's what's important to the viewing public. We come in and we might be the baddie of the week, or the drama of the week, or the danger. And as I say, the more we can do to create that primary color, or that thing that we can bring, the better it is. But that's what it is. We're in support of this arc.
And I think with that note, we can leave Mr. Shurtleff's book behind. I think we covered everything we needed to cover in that. I think, and not only that, I think we got a little bit of acting class from the mighty Julian Richings, because you brought up some good points that I wrote down, that I got an audition coming up, and I'm going to think about what you said, my friend.
Okay, it's funny. But I got to tell you that I might sound wise, but I fall for the same traps that everybody else does. I think when it comes to you personally, it's always hard. Auditioning is difficult.
And Julian, actually, at this point, I want to transition and I want to talk a little bit about you and your story, because sometimes as an actor, and I want to get your perspective, you've been in the industry for, gosh, you're obviously about 32, 33 years old. So you've been in the industry for at least,
professionally, I was thinking about it the other day, professionally about 44 years, about 44, 45.
So first off, you started as a theater actor and you toured, you were touring around North America, and then you illegally immigrated into Canada. I imagine you swam across a river and said, "You can't take me back. I'll never go back. I'll never go back." How did you make that transition from touring to saying, "I'm going to settle in Canada"? Or what was her name?
It was it's a long story. You've caught it, actually. I got here. I toured Chicago, New York, Toronto. Really liked, of the three cities, I really felt a kinship with Toronto. I really identified with the emerging culture here, the sense that didn't necessarily have as strong a voice as New York and Chicago, or self-image, but there was a vibrant community trying to understand what it was and what a Canadian voice was, and new diverse influences were coming in rapidly, and I felt that mirrored me, who I was in my mid-20s. I also fell in love. Now,
and there it is.
I tried the professional way. I worked with a small theatre company in Northern Ontario. I toured reserves with a traveling band of actors, and got to the point where I got a lot of support, but I couldn't combat the bureaucracy. So in the end, I had a very strong relationship with this young woman, and we said, "What are we going to do?" We got married. Now, so we didn't dare tell anybody, because it was our ticket to, like, my wife's Canadian and I'm British. So we said, okay, we're committed to each other. We just won't tell anybody, and we'll do it on our own terms. Well, we've been married 37 years now.
Oh my gosh.
So it was,
wow.
It was genuine, but we wouldn't, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know whether we'd actually be married legally, but it was the marriage certificate that made me able to become a Canadian citizen, or a landed immigrant, I should say, first, and then Canadian citizen. So it was difficult, and we were faced with the choice, and we went for it.
I think that's great, and the fact that you're still together after so long. Oh, Julian.
Yeah.
I feel so alone in my life right now. I can't make a relationship more than a couple of months. Here you are, 30-something years. Oh my goodness.
Well, and going back to our conversation, it's something that I value. I value long-term relationships. I value, like my agent, I've been with for a long time. I don't thrive on instability. And again, we try to embrace drama and be as dramatic as we can, and be, the secret card that people can go, let's use this guy. But in terms of my personal life, I like it to be not very bumpy, thank you very much. And I value long-term commitment.
Certainly, I think you really touch on something. And from personal experience, I can also attest that many actors, like, some actors that when I started work, I worked with some of them, and like these people I've watched my whole life on TV, and you're expecting them to be these incredibly charismatic, outgoing, but in between takes, they're like, I'm just going to go sit down.
Yeah.
And they're very mild.
Yeah.
Now, Julian, I want to touch on something here, because part of the idea behind the podcast is not just to take these learnings from these books and to learn from our guests. It's also to give people a pragmatic and realistic view of the acting industry. And you touched on something that I know you've been with your agent for a very long time, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the industry here in Canada versus the United States. And let me preface it with my perception.
Yeah.
And as for both, this doesn't just apply to Canada. I think we can say outside of LA and then LA. But essentially in Canada, like most big films, most projects, in my like limited experience, the main characters are always kind of cast in Los Angeles. And what we get here in Canada are a guest star role for one episode, a day player role. It's the same thing probably in Georgia. They'll get, because they have tax credits. So we'll hire we need to hire 5 Atlanta actors, or we need to hire 5 Toronto actors so we can get this tax credit. So they'll throw in these little 2-3 line day player roles, 1 day on set, 2 days on set. In your experience, has that always been the case? How has it changed? And how have you come to grips with that aspect of being an actor here in Canada?
It's always been the same. We do serve as a roadhouse here, for big industrial productions that come up
Vancouver
here.
And Toronto, huge.
And that's where our economy is generated, and a lot of jobs are generated. I don't have a problem with that. When you look at a Canadian population and our history, it's not surprising that the power is in the US. I don't begrudge that. As I said, when I first came to North America, I went to Chicago, New York, and Toronto. I made my peace with Toronto. I love Toronto for what it is and what it represents, for the fact that it feels like I'm a middle brother. I think that Toronto is a middle brother. I think that it finds itself somewhere between New York and London, and it doesn't quite, it kind of goes, well, I'm sort of this and I'm sort of that. And my older brother's got more of an identity, and my younger brother, and Toronto always kind of goes, should I show the CN Tower? Should I show streetcars? It's got this sort of persona that doesn't know whether to be embarrassed or whether to be proud, and it's gone through many. But I'm comfortable with that. I don't mind. I find that it's a genuine place of discovery, of artistic excellence. It's a great place to live. And, I've never, since I've immigrated to Canada, I've never felt the need to go down to the US. I've been able to do film, television, commercials, voice, radio, you name it, here, the theater, especially in Toronto. It's a vibrant center. I do get a little frustrated that, obviously, when you go for an audition, you go thinking, well, that's going to go to an American because the power and the economy base is down there. But okay, so how do I deal with it? I'm comfortable being in some of the product that comes here. But what I do is I'm heavily invested in the independent film scene in Canada. And I think it's an amazing place. I've done a lot of film, there's a big horror culture here, especially in
horror and sci-fi as well. Canada is like sci-fi central.
It really is. And with technology as it is now, people with limited resources can make some really interesting films. I've participated in a lot of independent film over the past 5 years in particular, and I feel very much part of a vibrant community. So that is who we are. That is our voice. That is an evolving thing, and we're finding ourselves going into the mainstream. And we have directors, and French Canadian directors, going down to the US. Yeah. We have actors that have made the choice to go down to the US. I'm comfortable here. I've stumbled into the US just in the last 3 or 4 years because of one specific project. I did a pilot for a show called Patriot that was shot in Montreal. It was greenlit. It's a great show. It was greenlit by Amazon, but the showrunner and writer decided that he wanted to shoot it in Chicago. And I thought, okay, well, that's it. I'm done. My part will be replaced by an American actor. But the showrunner said, no, I'll do the paperwork and I'll get you down here to do it. And sure enough, I went down and I did this show. And then I did a second season. And then I because of that, I had to get SAG membership. And, you know, I had to get a visa and I had to do all those kind of things to make it work. So I went, well, might as well have representation down here. So I have kind of expanded my horizon to the US, but it's never been a primary concern to me. It's been a joy, and I've been privileged to sort of stumble into it a little bit recently. But my career as an actor has been here in Canada, and my discoveries have been here, and most of my proud moments have been here.
I mean, you've played many iconic characters that I think expand much beyond. I know you say in Canada, but I think a lot of your characters, people around the world would recognize you, you know, and I hope you take this for the compliment that it is that, and this is literally what I aspire to be, that person that you don't really know their name, but you're like, oh, that guy's in everything.
Absolutely. You know? And I get it a lot, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. I'm comfortable. And I'm comfortable in, you know, if somebody's seen me in some sort of popular show that I don't know that much about it, but I go, oh yeah, it's very visible. A lot of people have seen. I'm totally cool. I'm not going to sort of go, oh, they didn't know that I played King Lear once in Shakespeare. You know, it's like I'm comfortable with doing everything. Like I'm a working actor, and I think the trade or the art of acting is sort of, it's got mixed up with celebrity and fame. Yep. And it's about like how famous you are. Well, for me, it's actually about the work that you do and the diversity of work that you do, and the abilities for you to be a tradesman, really, in many ways, which is why I have no problem doing, being a monster in 4 hours of makeup. I love hearing the special effects folks as they're creating me.
You like the lifestyle of the actor.
Yeah.
So, Julian, I'm just going to jump in here, because there's something that I think I want to just really clarify for the audience. And that is, one of the realities of being an actor outside of Los Angeles is that the realities of the working actor is, if you're not in the LA community, it's very difficult to have huge roles, and you have to be okay with being the guest actor, being there for a couple of seasons, being there for one day, being in one episode. You know, that's the realities of being an actor, here in Canada especially, but in other parts of the world, like I said, there's LA and not LA.
Yeah.
The second thing that I think you touched upon that's very important is that, there are people who get on sets and you can tell that their goal is not to be an actor. Their goal is to be famous. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, I would count Julian. I would say I'm in the top 5% of actors, because I usually work every year. You are in the top 0.05% of actors, Julian, because you work several times a year in noticeable guest star roles. And even then, that's the reality of being an actor, is that you might not be a star, you might not be a household name, and if your goal is to be an actor, that's a noble goal to have. If your goal is to be a star, you're probably not in the right industry, because the odds are so stacked against you.
Absolutely.
Just by sheer numbers, like in the same way that the odds are against you in a lottery. Now, let me touch on one thing here that you said, Julian, that I was hoping you could give me a little more on, and that is, After the Patriot, which is a great show on Amazon. You know, actually, we have a lot of mutual connections who are in that show, because they did all the initial pilot here in Toronto. What has your experience been now, having an American agent or having more exposure in the US? How has that changed the type of roles you've been offered?
It hasn't changed anything for me.
Really?
Now, don't forget, I'm at a different stage in my career. You know, like I'm at the tail end of my career.
Julian is 32 years old. So he's pretty much too old to be an actor now. He's playing grandfathers.
Well, I am. You know, that's an interesting thing, is that I've just been in a couple of films where I've played grandfathers, and that's sort of me going, oh, right, I'm that age group now, which
Yes.
is its own demographic, right? Now, if what I'm talking about, it does not pertain to somebody that's 25 and that looks differently than I am. I look like a character. I don't look like a leading guy, or what we perceive as a leading guy. I struggle with that personally. I find, what makes somebody, because they're better looking or they have a different body type, does that make them valid as a leading hero? Or I struggle with that, but it doesn't matter. If I were 25, then yeah, it might be quite different, but I'm comfortable. I've lost track. Sorry, Ivan. What am I saying? I'm meandering.
You're so insightful. You're so insightful. And I was so into what you were saying. And it's the idea. And this leads really well here. I'm actually going to call Tim back up here right now. Tim, I'm just going to boom. This is another thing that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And that is being realistic of what you can do based on your look. Because in theater, it's not as much. I find in theater, there's much more elaboration on what you can be. But in film and television, first you have to look the part, and then we'll see if you can act. And because you have to look it.
Yeah, the surface reality. I mean, we
you got to look
positioned in a room with a sink that's either a very fancy kitchen or it's really down at heel. So there's a surface reality according to in our storytelling. Yeah. You have to match that surface reality. You can't look like you don't belong. In theater, we have more of an imaginative license.
You can explore, yes,
much more. And this is again what I would say to people that go, well, I can only do a day in a Hollywood show. Well, sure, do a day in a Hollywood show. Do a fringe show at the Toronto Fringe.
Yeah. Be an actor, man.
Find an independent film company that's doing a show in Aurelia or in North Bay, or find out what's going on. Like there are things happening to satisfy your appetite as an actor. I need to act. I need to perform to do. It's not about, like how many people have seen it or how many likes.
You just need to be you have that urge. And I'll tell you, Julian, before you leave, I want to get your advice on how to find independent films, but that's later. I want to touch on something because we were just on before, and I want to put Tim on the spot. I would like us to judge Tim for a minute if we can. So we're going to judge Tim. This is a game I call Judging Tim. No, one acting exercise, and something that I tell a lot of beginner actors when they come to the Actors Place, which is the meetup group that sponsors this podcast, is I say you have to take the test. Look at yourself pragmatically. Pick what you're self-conscious about, and be prepared to have that constantly be what you're auditioning for. I'll give you, and there's an example of my friend Thomas, brilliant actor, beautiful actor. He looks creepy. He looks creepy as fuck. When he tries to smile and look nice, he looks like a child molester. And that's just the way he looks.
Yeah.
And he said, at a certain point, I just realized that I got to stop trying to be good looking. I'm always going to play that. So here's the game we're going to play, Julian. There's a game that people do in acting. A lot of casting directors will do this when they do casting director sessions, is they'll have someone stand on stage and they'll ask everyone else to say, what do you think this person could play? What do they look like they would play? Because in film and television, that's what you got to look like. So we're going to do it for Tim. And then we'll do it for me. And then Julian, we'll turn the mirror onto yourself, because I know that you have a perspective on this. So when we look at Tim, and this is beautiful for the podcast, but go on YouTube and you'll see Tim McClarty, also on IMDb. So what would Tim play, do you think? Because this is how an actor, you have to look at yourself the way others see you, so you know what you can actually play. What do you think, Julian?
I'm biased because I am somebody that's positioned as a character.
Yes.
And so I will look at Tim and I would deliberately probably go against type and suggest things. I think Tim has a gentle kind of aura about him. So therefore, I suspect that, most people would not say you're a hard ass cop, right? There's something about Tim that's more doctor or more caring or more I see you with surrounded by technology, so scientific maybe. But I would like to see Tim as a cop, as a head of police.
Like a detective, yeah.
So I think that would be very interesting. I think because he would bring something to that kind of authority that is not traditionally, traditionally it's a kind of a.
It's not as gruff,
but
like Tony Nappo, who's a mutual friend, he could play a gruff guy. You know what I mean? But
the stereotype would be for Tony, it would be a gangster or a cop. That's Tony has a lot of strings to his bow, and again, I disagree. I would like to see him play against Type, but he recognizes that. But so for Tim, so I guess I've really covered it. I suspect
maybe I would say a dad too.
Dad,
dad, maybe a
neighbor,
school teacher,
professional. Yeah. There's something professional, and yeah.
And notice we didn't say leading man.
Could also be priest.
I could see Tim as a priest.
You know what? In school, they used to call me Father Tim in college.
Yeah,
especially with that voice, I could see him being the confessional, to introduce a character and to introduce.
It's about the eyes. Generally, it's about it. Like we've got all these other things going on, but it's whatever exudes from the eyes that says so much.
The reason we're playing this game is because I want the listening audience to know that you not only have to be able to look at yourself this way. There's two other things that Julian has demonstrated. Number one, the way he described Tim is what you would see in a breakdown. They would say, we're looking for someone who has this kind of energy, this kind of feel, and this kind of look. And you have to be pragmatic. And then you also have to be able to take it. Because, there's many people who I've met in my acting journey who you could see that they were trying to be that leading man. And you could see it wasn't them. And you have to be pragmatic. And when, I personally, so now I'm going to turn the mirror on myself and I'm going to ask both of you, Tim, this is your chance. 10 years you've been waiting for this, Tim. Cast me, what do you think I could play? Because not only do you have to be able to see it, you have to be able to accept it.
Well, I know that, Yvonne, you fight with this. I don't know if you fight with it or you've just come to accept it, but you get cast for a lot of Latino roles.
Like 90%. It's Javier, Garcia, Carlos, all that stuff. Yeah.
And that's pretty obvious. But I think in today's society, where we have so much ethnic mix, I don't think that should be necessarily an automatic. I mean, I would personally cast you in a leading role. I would cast you as a lead character in whatever it is you're doing.
That's funny because I would never see myself as the traditional, the way Julian was saying, that traditional look of leading man. But that's very sweet of you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think
but
so.
See, even me taking that as a compliment shows you a little bit of my insecurity. You know what I mean? We all want to be good looking. We all want to be attractive. You know? But I just I just signed with a new agency yesterday, believe it or not.
Oh, congratulations.
And a big motivation why they wanted me is because, we want someone who's Latino, because that'll come in a breakdown. We're looking for someone 25 to 35, Hispanic, and then other things. But that's like the first few things. Julian, what would you say? And you can go ethnic-y on me. It's okay. I play anything beige. That's what I say. If it's beige, you want Greek? I'll do a Greek. You want Arabic? I'll do Arabic.
It's interesting. Beige, I can do it. So that specificity, I guess, and again, this is my own bias.
Yes, sir.
I've fought it. I have friends who, like Allegra Fulton. Do you know Allegra?
Yeah.
Who's the most wonderful actor. She has been cursed she's my generation, and she's had to fight the Latino kind of hex. Oh well, and so I maybe it's willed, but I don't see it. So I don't see it in you. So my first thing for you is that I see your there's a hunger in you. So I would see you as and again, it's eyes, it's energy.
So much of acting is in the eyes. Not in sorry, Julian, keep going. I just want people to realize that.
So for you, I would like to see you as angry ex-prisoner, somebody with a chip on their, like, that's carrying something, but a passion, that either a love or kind of disillusionment or a betrayal or something, whether it be whatever. So because you've got that, you that's something that you have that ferocity, maybe you're charming.
A lot of
you
bad guys,
have
tough characters.
You compensate by being very gracious, but there is in there a drive, right, that I pick up. So for me, that's sort of interesting. So what Tim said about being a leading men have that drive, but more often I would say leading men are a little blander than that. And it's the guy that they're again, it's the other guy in the show that you would be.
And I've never wanted to be the lead. I've always
co-star. You'd be the co-star or the bad guy or the whatever that is. So yeah, interesting.
And Julian, I want everyone who's listening, I think it's really important to understand, and I really want to highlight something Julian is doing right now, is you could literally take what he said and that could be word for word in a breakdown of what the casting director, they'll say, we want someone who looks hungry, there's passion. The things he's saying, you should be in casting, Julian. You got to start producing, because I mean the way you're describing things, I've read those, and they're so helpful.
Well, it's funny. It has got better over the years. Originally, it was sort of euphemisms like quirky, and
you do get those.
And sort of
strange,
like and then you'd go, is this character gay? Is like what's going on? Like, and all sorts of like hidden kind of codes saying things.
They couldn't say gay, so they give you all these other things to say, like we can't say it's what we want.
You're putting two and two together and going, okay, all right. So it's got better, and in terms of diversity of casting, it's much better, and it's more upfront. I find, but so here's another thing. I have an accent, so that's very much. Sometimes that can be a problem for me because everybody assumes that, well, he's that guy with the accent. So
why is this Canadian guy putting on a British accent? We didn't put that in the breakdown.
Or that he's British, so we can't give him the part. There's that. It's got better. Again, it's got better. I think people recognize that people can lose things or can tonally shift in order to kind of compensate for a thing that you have. Or anyway.
Well, Julian, I will tell you this. There's two things. One is, why can't someone have a Romanian accent but also be a lawyer? For some reason in the film world, like it's getting better, but sometimes it was like, if you have a Romanian accent, well, then you have to play a Romanian gangster or an immigrant or something. You can't just be something with an accent, even though that's our day-to-day all the time.
I know.
Right?
I know.
And then
same with Indigenous actors too. We at least
they can't just got to the point. Have to be Indigenous.
I want Indigenous professionals, and I know that our society is unjust, and sadly, the percentage of Indigenous people in professional roles is lesser. But let's be positive. Let's challenge people's assumption. Because we're not helping in
so that actually, there's something I wanted to ask you, Julia, that really, let's challenge people's assumptions. That really touches on something. Julian, you definitely play, when you say you have a character face.
Yeah.
Anyone who's seen Julian Richings know, like, he's so distinctive in his look. As a result of that, you get typecast sometimes as certain types of roles.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump into what you think your look is?
Okay. Outsider, could be thin. That's the thing that comes up.
You get a lot because you're thin.
Because I have cheekbones. I'm actually not thin. I'm not very thin, but it's cheekbones. And again, how superficial our perception is of people. If you actually looked at my entire body, but it's the information that's being projected here.
We will be posting nudes of Julian on the podcast.
I'm actually built,
so you can get a real sense.
Yeah,
he's very he gets into it. He leaves nothing on the floor, gang. So don't worry about that. You'll get a view of his body.
Oh dear. Otherly, that I have an otherliness. I have an alienness. which is used. And I'm quite happy to embrace that because I am. And I'm comfortable in my worldview that I'm a slightly displaced person. That is who I am. I speak slightly differently than people do. I have a pronounced, and I'm I've accepted the fact that I'm accented, not vocally, but physically. I grew up in physical theater. We haven't touched on it, but my training is a little different than most people's training. I went to Poland. I studied with Grotowski. I act with my body. I've learned to tone that down, but I am accented. So therefore, I recognize that how I'm going to get cast will be somebody that's accented.
And if you see in his record, some of your memorable parts. I talked about it at the beginning when I was I don't hope I never made you feel old, Julian. When I said when I was a little kid, Julian scared me because he was in War of the Worlds, and I was like I was so afraid of the aliens. I loved that show, dude. I never want to watch it again because I feel like it hasn't held up at all. But Julian was a breakout for me, and I've never forgotten his face. And that was because you had an alienness. In Hardcore Logo, because of your skinniness, you played that kind of reclusive,
Iggy Pop,
rock star heroine.
Keith Richard, heroin addict kind of thing, which again, and I like that, you see, because that is a part of me, that influence, the rock and roll influence, being part of the punk movement. I feel that that's creatively very much who I am and my culture,
that part.
what I've embraced proudly. And so, to have a role where I sort of distill that into a character, that's great for me. The same with the alien, So.
And I will say, if you have never watched Hardcore Logo, watch Hardcore Logo.
It's a great film.
Julian, it messed me up a little bit. I'm going to be honest. There was a few moments in that scene, and one scene in particular that you were in that I just I remember going oh.
Yeah.
And then the ending, of course, is brilliant.
It's brilliant. And to the point where Bruce McDonald has to take a lot of credit for this, but he created a world in that film before what do you call them? Like The Office, that documentary style.
Thank you. Kind of, where you are aware that these people are aware they're being filmed, and you are the person filming them.
It was submitted to the Berlin Film Festival as a documentary, and was actually because it
that clever bastard.
It preceded a lot of other
before the Blair Witch. Yeah,
it was. I think it might have been around the same time or just before, but it's. So it was really an interesting film, really great to do.
Yeah, and a plethora of amazing other actors, other Canadian actors. Hugh Dillon, who played the lead, that was great. The scene that you had with him is the part that the very last scene you had with him was the one that I'm not going to ruin it for anyone, but I was just like. And if you can't see me right now, I'm making like a throwy uppy / I'm heartbroken face, Julian, put you on the spot for a second. I've never not known you to have an accent in any of your roles, and you've gotten away with that a lot. And you say it's limited you, but because of your character roles that you play, I think you get away with it. Have you ever had to do an American accent?
Yeah. In Patriot, I do an American accent.
Can I put you on the spot for a minute? Can we try it?
It would be hard. It would be hard. Okay, so I'll tell you what I do as an actor.
Yeah, tell me.
It's a lens. It's just I put a lens that distills my Britishness, so I get rid of any British tells. So
you're doing it. I can see you doing it.
That's great. And change my mouth. Change. So what I do is I kind of speak in a different part of the mouth, and arts and the butter and I just get rid of the. But I maintain my voice as much as I can. Do you know what I mean?
As much as I can.
Yeah. And just put little colors like that in there. So it's not like, I'm putting on an accent now. It's like I'm just kind of putting a lens on top of the way I speak.
And this is, I never wanted to do this as a video podcast, but Tim always insists on doing it as a video podcast. And I think these are the moments why. Because you probably didn't even notice, but Julian's entire persona changed. Literally, and you talk about focus on the physical, and your physicality changed.
Yeah.
You could hear it, but I think if anyone is listening, go and check out the YouTube video, because man, you literally changed the way you were leaning, the way your face, the muscles, and you did talk with a different part of your mouth.
Well, that's what accents are.
Work.
Accents are placement in different certain accents are at the front of the mouth, certain at the back, and they give you a corresponding attitude too. So yeah. In fact, it's interesting. Patriot, I put an American accent on. We're supposed to be Chicago, Milwaukee.
That when you changed, then I literally thought of Milwaukee. I dated a girl from Milwaukee, and when you said, I don't know what was that word you said, I can or something, and I literally thought of her.
Okay,
so bravo, good sir, bravo, you nailed it.
So I didn't dare ask, because if you get into listening to yourself when you're talking, and you're thinking it's a nightmare. It's like you got to say the thought. You can't worry about specific words. But there comes a point where you have to say to somebody, "Is it okay? Do I sound all right?" But I did have that difficult conversation one time with Steve, the showrunner, writer, and he said, "Oh, I don't think of you as having an accent." So, bravo. So in other words, I think what he was saying was basically, yes, you are weird. Like I'm paraphrasing here, but you have a specificity. Be that specificity. That's why I like you. And sure, don't be British. Don't go, cool, blimey, mate. How are you? Like that doesn't fit. But be a part of this world, but be an accented part of this world. That's who you are.
And I'm going to invite people to check out the previous episodes, because that's like a choice you can make. Like sometimes you can make it dramatic. If I can't nail this accent, I'm going to put a character with this accent. Not to say you didn't nail it, but you can also bring something. It doesn't have to be just realism. And in fact, one last thing, we never talked about it, but realistic is overrated sometimes. There's a casting director, and I'm not gonna. He's retired now, but in Vancouver, and he was notorious for being very tough, like a tough guy in Vancouver. And growing up as an actor in Vancouver, you were afraid to see him. Like the first time you had to see him, you get a little scared, because he was known. Like, he would actually sit in the shot with you sometimes in the audition. But he was the only game in town for a long time. And the idea, like I remember the idea of like making a mistake was so scary. And then to his credit, he did a presentation once at an acting school, and he said this, and I've never forgotten this. He said, "You know what? So what if you're realistic? Everyone in the waiting room is realistic. I don't want to see realism. I want to see a character. I want to see a persona. I want to see someone who I'm, what is going on with this?" That's what film and television really is about. Because realism is only your baseline now. Being realistic is a baseline. What can you do on top of that? And I think that's what you were touching on just then.
Yeah, but remaining truthful to who you are.
Yeah, don't be crazy for the sake of crazy.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I would actually describe that as being realistic. I would say, I would call that amplifying. Simply amplify a mood or a choice or an insecurity. Grotowski talks about cover-ups, things that we do when, like I'm talking to you very confidently and I'm, or whatever. There's a physicality that's contradicting what I'm saying. Go with that so that you go, what's going on there? But it's interesting and it's true. It's just an amplification. It's going back to that Meyerhold example of the corkscrew. Yeah. It's like physicality of it, yeah. But that's me. That's my bias, and I'm trained that way. So I have a sort of a connection to that. And again, that makes me a distinct actor, as much as where I come from or what the color of my skin is. There's a distinctness about my training and my approach to storytelling.
You're a distinct actor is a great way to say it. Julian, what parts do you wish you would play that you haven't played or that you don't play enough of? Have you ever wanted to be like the love interest? Have you?
Oh, sure. But I've
tell me something you wish, like, man, I would love to be blank. I would love to do more blank.
Carrying a story arc is something that I'm not expected to do. As I've said before, I'm expected to come in, with a strong short-term push. The stamina involved in a long-term story arc is preferred, but I got to do it as well. I mean, I have a couple of films coming out now, Canadian independent films that do that. Where, like, I've just done a film with Sheila McCarthy, who is a wonderful actress. We've been paired together as an elderly couple, which always makes me laugh because I can't believe that we're elderly, but we are in the scheme of things. And we play grandparents, and it's a lot of fun. So I don't know. I like to be surprised. I like to be challenged, and I like work to keep coming.
I think, honestly, I can't think of a better note to end on than that. This has been an hour and a half already. It's gone by so fast, and I don't want to take more of your time, Julian. So I think you've been very gracious. I'm going to say, I think we might want to have you back if you maybe, and I'll reach out again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
maybe we'll get another chapter here.
Part 2, the follow-up.
Hardcore logo 2.
Yeah.
Well, but honestly, I feel there was all these other things I wanted to talk about in Julian's career and his insights, and we've just scratched the surface of all the great knowledge you have. And part of the reason I wanted to bring this podcast in is you hear interviews with like celebrities all the time, but there's so much value in seeing these people who are lifelong actors. There's so much experience and learning, and and you'll have many more years to go. And I'm excited to see what you come up with next.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your enthusiasm too, and your questions. They're really good. So thank you.
You hear that, Tim? You hear that?
I heard.
This show is nothing without me. You're nothing without me. Anything, Julian, we might actually cut this, make a little time code here. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to promote? And the reason I want to put a time code here, Tim, is because I want to put plugs at the beginning, because people listen less and less as the podcast, as like with all podcasts as they go on.
Yeah.
So I want to put plugs at the beginning. Julian, before we begin, is there anything you want to let people know about that you're doing? Any projects or anything you want to plug?
No, I always try to plug Patriot because it's on Amazon. And it's one of the underrated, underseen, but Amazon never backed it for some reason. There was politics behind the scenes, I'm sure. And it wasn't one of the favored shows there, but my goodness, I think it's a brilliant show.
I'm original.
I'm very happy to plug that. I guess when you say plug, you will mention it, will you? Kind of thing.
This right here that you're saying, we're gonna put in there. But I will plug it if you want.
I was so clumsy, and I would have phrased it very differently. I would have been very
that's real, baby.
Up, ladies and gentlemen. Come see me in.
Can you do it? Okay, let's do this for fun, Julian. In your poshiest English, you say, "Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage all of you to watch."
Oh dear.
Let's see. Let's hear Julian with his poshiest plug. Here we go.
Good evening. I highly recommend Amazon. Oh no, that's, you see, I got it wrong. I can't even do it properly now.
I have this, the beauty of pre-record. We're going to put all this in. We're putting all this in. One more. Here's what we'll do.
One more. Okay.
One more, and then we're going to get.
You're showing everybody how not to perform or how not to audition or be spontaneous. Okay. All right. Here goes again. Patriot. Written and directed by Stephen. I've even forgotten his name now. This is appalling.
Oh my God! But your intensity was so good, Julian. I was like, yes, yes. Like his intensity was so great there.
It's because I'm actually, there. I've decided to sort of make a grab for you, but inside the wheels are spinning, going, what the hell am I saying? What am I doing? Anyway,
so I feel like, listen, if you haven't gotten the hint already, watch Patriot on Amazon, you bastards. It is one of the most original takes on the spy genre that I've ever. It's beautifully written. It's dramatic. It's comedic. It's got amazing characters. Yeah.
And it's all about characters and also patriotism, but patriotism in a family, like what your obligations are as a father and a sibling, and those kind of ideas, not the inflated hullabaloo patriotism, but exactly the opposite things. What really matters.
Thanks, Tim. Tim just like, it's Stephen Conrad.
Thank you. Yes, it's Stephen. How I forgot his name, I can't.
No, you know what,
imagine.
Dude? I forget my name half the time. So don't even worry about that. Tim, I'm going to throw it to you now. Can you plug Radio in your best Tim commercial radio voice?
Sure. Radio, if you're a budding actor or anybody for that matter who wants to do a podcast, Radio Studios, we will sit down with you and help you find your voice and find your audience and do an excellent job. That's my plug. And I also have to say...
You got a little throaty there at the end. You hear that? That's my plug.
That's my plug. I also have to say, sir, that it's been a pleasure listening to you talk about acting today, and I've enjoyed your work immensely. And absolutely. I would love to see you come back.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Another edition of The Lazy Actor. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you weren't too lazy to listen to the whole thing. Big thank you to radioradio.com. If you want to make a podcast, if you want to get some voice stuff recorded, check out radioradio.com. If you want to learn more about the acting industry, the acting business, or do some virtual training, check out theactorsplace.org. And that is it. We will see you next time where we address yet another part of Audition by Michael Shurtleff, my favorite acting book. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.